Okay, Chairman, I can confirm it is now just after 4 o'clock. The live stream has commenced and we are ready to start the meeting.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Development Control meeting of the 16th of September 2020. I would like to advise that today we will be using Zoom to provide a live stream to members of the public, and please can we ask you bear with us as we are dealing with numerous internet connections and sometimes this can cause a slight delay.
Thank you, Chairman. Just bear with. Sorry, Chairman, about that. I had two noises in the back of my screen. So thank you, Chairman. I can confirm that Sammy Winter will be your Zoom host for today. Dean Mims, Chris Green and Rob Tate will be the officers presenting during the meeting today. We have IT support on hand if required, and myself, Sammy Winter, will be clerking the meeting today. During the meeting, all participants, except for the Chairman, will be muted, and this should remain during the whole of the meeting unless you have asked to speak. May I take this opportunity to remind members that all members are invited to participate in the meeting, but would ask that you use the raise hand button, which can be found at the bottom of the participant screen, should you wish to speak on any matter. The Chairman will be notified of your request, and he will then invite you to speak. Once you have been called to speak, please could we ask you to unmute yourself and then once spoken, mute yourself again. Anyone who has telephoned into the meeting will be invited to speak after all those that have raised their hands have spoken. When asking a question, please could we ask members to refer to page numbers within the report on gender to ease to officers. If we need to adjourn the meeting, the Chairman will advise of this and the anticipated length of adjournment. When voting on an application, this will be undertaken by a roll call of those members present. Once your name is called, please unmute yourself and respond accordingly. When confirming the minutes and noting delegated and appeal decisions, unless any member raises an objection on these matters, these will be confirmed by assent. Members can only partake in voting on an application if they have been present for the entire discussion on the application. Chairman, I can confirm that today we have an apology from Councillor Barbara Wright. If I could now just undertake a roll call of members present. Councillor Annison.
Present.
Councillor Bird.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fairhead. Councillor Flaxman-Taylor.
Present.
Councillor Freeman.
Present.
Councillor Lawn.
Present.
Councillor Hammond.
Present.
Councillor Mogford.
Present.
Councillor Myers.
Present.
Councillor Wainwright.
Present.
Councillor Williamson.
Present.
And Councillor T. Wright.
Present.
Thank you. Chairman, I can confirm officers present today at the meeting. We have Caroline Watling, Monitoring Officer, Dean Mims, Planning Manager, Chris Green, Planning Officer, Rob Tate, Planning Officer, Gordon Sutherland, Senior Planning Officer, and Sammy Wintle, Corporate Services Manager. Members, I can confirm that we have external participants who have joined the meeting today to discuss the planning applications to be considered. Any external attendees will be called forward to speak at the appropriate time and will remain as attendees during the meeting. External attendees are only to speak when called forward, and to confirm there will be no entitlement for any external questions. Chairman, we can now start the agenda items, but I just would like to draw your attention that Councillor Wainwright has his hand raised.
No, I was just going to say I was abstaining from the first application as I'm on the Marina Centre working group.
Should we cover that under declarations of interest, Councillor?
Yeah, well, saying, yeah, I thought you were getting my yes on.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. Chairman, we can continue.
Thanks, Sammy. We move to item number 1. Any apologies for absence, please?
Yep, Chairman, I can confirm we have apologies from Councillor Barbara Wright today.
Yes, and just on that note, I would like to, on behalf of the committee, send our best wishes to Councillor Barbara Wright, and I hope she gets well soon. Item number 2, any declarations of interest, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I would abstain from item 4, the Great Yarmouth Marketplace, as I'm on the Marina Centre working group, so I won't partake in that item.
Councillor Wainwright, can I just confirm, do you mean the Town Centre Master Plan Members Working Group, not the Marina Centre for the
Well, yeah.
marketplace?
Well, we have two.
So you're.
Oh, sorry. I'm going. Yeah, it's a town centre working. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Town centre working group.
Lovely, thank you.
Chairman, can I declare an interest? I'm parish and ward councillor for Ormsby St Margaret. And there was an application in for Fritton Close Ormsby.
I declare an interest, Sammy,
Yep, Councillor
as
Williamson.
a member of the trust on item 4 on the agenda.
Sorry, could you just repeat that, Councillor Williamson?
I declare an interest on item 4. I'm
Yep.
chairman of the Preservation Trust, which has been involved with the marketplace and also on the Town Centre Working Party.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor
And,
Hammond?
Councillor Bird is also on the Market Committee, so I will be not taking part.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hammond?
Yes, Sammy, same here for me. Item 4, I'm a member of the working group, so I will not be taking part. Thank you.
Thank you. Those members that are not taking part in item 4 for the marketplace, what we will ask you to do is turn your cameras and your microphones off. You will be put into the attendees, which may, it will seem as if it's cut you off, but it will still have you linked, and then you'll be promoted back once we've moved on from that item.
Okay.
Yep. Thank
I'm
you, Chairman.
also declarations of interest, Sammy. Item 5. I know Phil and Carol Perry from Perry's Ice Cream, and also Mr. Ellis from Beach House Cafe. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, then we move to item number 3 to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of August 2020 as a true and accurate record. Everybody happy with those minutes? Yeah.
Yep. Chairman, if we have no hands raised, these can be taken on assent if we have no objections. And I can confirm I have no hands raised. Thank you.
Okay, then. So we now move on to item number 4, which is the application for Great Yarmouth Marketplace. And that is with Dean Minns.
Lovely, thank you, Chairman. If I can just make sure that we've got the 4 members that shouldn't be partaking, I'll just move them over to the attendees. So if you just bear with me 2 seconds. Chairman, I just want to make sure also that Councillor Fairhead has joined. So I just want to make sure before we start the application that she can hear us, because otherwise she will have joined after the meeting. So I just want to make sure that she can hear us and see us before we start. Councillor Fairhead, can you now hear us and see us? Okay. Yes. Yeah. So Councillor Fairhead, I can't hear or see you, so I won't be able to include you in this, but a roll call has been undertaken. So we are still quorate with the members that have been taken out due to having a conflict of interest. I just wanted to double check if the monitoring officer wanted to come in on anything there. Or are you happy for us to continue?
I'm just wondering, sorry, I came to the meetings 5 minutes before 4 o'clock. So was the roll call in during the public live stream?
Yes. Yes.
It was, okay.
Yep.
Fine.
Okay, so we can now continue, Chairman. So it's over to
Yeah,
Dean.
Dean Minns, Planning Manager. Dean?
Thank you, Chairman. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just about to share my screen there. Can you see the illustration on the screen as well?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. What's happened there then?
There we go.
Is that, you've got it now, have you?
Yep, we can see that.
Good. Right, I'll just sort of run through this. I've got a presentation of slides there sort of illustrating the application before us this evening. Members, and obviously got a committee report before you as well there. In terms of the application, as the chairman says, demolition of the existing covered market and construction of a new 6-day covered market. The application itself is located within conservation area number 2. Within the report, you've also got this sort of sets out the background history to the marketplace. And so you can see the existing structure that we've got before us on the screen at the present time there was provided back in 1992 there. And this aim is to sort of, this proposal is to replace it with a modern purpose-built structure aimed at creating a pleasing retail environment for both customers and retailers. And again, within the report, it sort of sets out really that this was to house, proposed building will house 30 permanent stores on the site, along with pop-up and seating seating areas. Again, also, I'm just running through there just to give you a little bit of context of where we are. And I think it's important just to sort of run through this because we've got sort of comments from the Historic England, which are actually within the report.
Sorry, Dean, can I just stop you there? Can I just make sure everybody's muted because we can hear talking in the background, which is over talking yourself, Dean. So I just want to make sure everybody's muted.
Okay.
Thank you. Carry on, Dean.
Okay. Just to sort of a little bit of sort of context, historic context really of how sort of the market place has changed over the years there. And you can then sort of see that really in relationship to the comments that you have from Historic England actually within your pack there. There is also sort of further comments from Historic England on the design adjustments that have sort of come into this during the course of this application, and I'll go through those shortly as well there. But again, you can see the you can see the context, you can see the surrounding buildings around the marketplace from days gone by there, and obviously you can then sort of equate it with your knowledge of the marketplace and how things have changed today. And just looking there again, so interesting when you sort of go back on that and then sort of come forward again, how things have changed. So we've got this sort of cross-shaped, elongated sort of marketplace as we stand at the moment there. So fundamentally sort of running through here, and then we've got these sort of running sort of east to west again on the building, across the building there. And I highlight those because they're important in the context of what's being said by the English heritage on this, or Historic England as they are called now. And also you can sort of see really the relationship with the surrounding buildings. Primarily what we've got along this side here is this sort of historic buildings with and the smaller scale buildings, and included around there are sort of a number of listed buildings, which is mentioned in the report. Obviously to the east side here we've got sort of the more sort of modern day development that's taken place of a much larger scale than on this side there, and the mass is sort of bigger as well on that. In the distance we've then got the Minster Church as well, and again sort of looking at, and it's important to sort of see that in the context of the marketplace again as well. Historically the marketplace has been sort of there or thereabouts and sort of and used as a market since the 12th and 13th century, and as I mentioned in those various sort of forms that we saw earlier there. The site area is approximately 0.47 hectares, and the gross internal floor space of the market is 1,265 square meters. and that's the existing one, and the proposed is 1,640 square meters, which is an overall increase of 375 square meters there. And again, you can see where we are in the context of the existing market there. And this proposal is to move it further to the north, and which then allows a greater sort of area around here, and opens up this area more so to as a public space. You can see how also with the marketplace, with the market at the moment, how these units have sort of grown over the years around this area, and how they sort of sit in the context of this sort of historic marketplace. Going back to the report again, as originally submitted, the building is sort of, and this is at 1.5 there, the building is a single story with a graded height, with a maximum height from 6.5 meters to 8.5 meters, and approximately 25 meters wide and 85 meters long, which included at that stage was part of those measurements as the overhanging roof. By comparison with the existing building, the graded ridge height of the existing is 4.7 meters to 5 meters in height, with the existing side features entrances rising to 6.2. So these are these areas that you come in here, and we sort of, you've then got this sort of peak, if you like, in the center there. And I mentioned earlier really about the sort of the contrast of the two sides, if you like, as part of this application here. And this and since the proposal has been submitted, we've had a number of comments from Historic England about the actual proposal there, which is then sort of in response to that, I mentioned earlier that the plans have been adjusted to take in some of those comments. There are further comments which I'll then go on to shortly there. But the amendments include adjustment to the internal layout to better reflect the building that surrounds the market and provide a clear east-west permeability across the building. So at the moment, this is what we have sort of running through there. And this is to sort of echo that again, but also, as you'll see within the plans coming up there, also to sort of be in alignment with the actual sort of market rows, so that again, you can then sort of see through the building through to the other side there, and this will sort of then is expanded upon in the permeability sort of section of the of this report. The roof eaves as well has been sort of developed further, stepping up towards the minister. If I can just sort of move this forward, and we'll just come back here, and let me just come back here. So, and then you can sort of see what I was sort of talking about there, that this is sort of set about within that sort of, within the marketplace, gone further north there, which would then allow this area, this is courtesy of snipped this from the journal the other day, but courtesy of this particular, courtesy of the journal, that around here, you'll then have this sort of improved access, plus this sort of additional landscaping, what have you. These areas at the moment don't actually form part of the application side, but are being sort of made, worked up, and will be in conjunction with that as part of the sound center sort of enhancement really there. You can also sort of see how this has been sort of adjusted as well. So just running through there, that each of these steps are sort of relate to the east wing crossing within the building. I mentioned that already. This is further reflected in the roof where each crossing point is glazed, and you can just sort of see these glazed areas coming around here. And you'll see that again as I run through. The large overhangs to the south and north, and again, I'll show you those in a moment, have now been removed. So this sort of just sort of ends at this point here. Previously, we had this sort of pointing out, coming out, so you get the sort of oversailing there. So those have now been pulled back as well as part of the amended proposals there. And the external material has been amended to timber following comments from Historic England, and the structure columns are articulated more clearly now. The V columns, when viewed externally, indicate entrance points, which is here running into the building, also down the side here, and then for the northern section of this as well. So those are the adjustments made so far to the proposal. At 110, you can see that, again, a number of reports have been submitted with the application there, and which is the heritage impact assessment, regeneration statement, planning statement, design and access statement, ventilation and extraction strategy, and sustainability statement, along with the drainage statement. And also the, again, in response to the Historic England's comments there, the site context report has been sort of updated for further information again there. I just sort of sit on those for a little bit, sort of because it's important again in the context of what Historic England is saying, and also the way that we actually deal with this application in the context of the legislation that we have as part of a sort of the conservation area and listed buildings legislation, but also in the context of the planning policy framework guidance as well, there, along of course with, as ever, with our own local plan policies there. Moving on to page 15, we then have sort of consultations received. I'll just run through there again so you can just sort of see that a little bit more. And just articulating that sort of what I was saying about the actual sort of showing the inner workings, if you like, of the site. And then the existing one back there again. So just going through this, we then have the local traders at 2-1. The 2-day market traders have made their comments about this. And again, the both the 2-day traders and the 6-day traders haven't really sort of made their concerns about the actual sort of building itself known, but more of what they seem to be more concerned about is the actual operation of the market itself there, which is quite understandable from that point of view. So again, they're talking about they haven't had enough meetings and or correspondence from Great Yarmouth Borough Council regarding the location of the 2-day market there. There have been sort of various meetings have been going on about this, but again, don't get bogged down on this because what we're looking at here at the moment is the 6-day market and how it sits within its surroundings there. 2.2, we've got 6-day market traders comments. And again, they're sort of concerned with the fact that there hasn't been a great, because of the COVID shutdown period, it's been difficult for market traders to actually sort of get together and discuss this sort of this proposal there. And at 2.3 there, one of the sort of criticisms really was that the plans went live on Wednesday, the 8th of July, and obviously we're now at the 16th of September, with a cutoff date of the 16th of July, 2020, not giving traders very much time to discuss with each other any problems with the new plans and to be able to resolve any issues. The letters also raised concern about the manner in which the information on the future running of the market, and they draw a comparison really with the recent Regent Road retail development there, and concerned about that. And really, I think from what I can take from that is really about the way that the units were then sort of built up. And at that particular time, the traders actually within the market were actually within the Regent Road development were dislodged at that particular time as well elsewhere. So obviously what they're concerned about really, reading between the lines, is that they don't want to have a repetition of that happening here again. The letter also raised concerns because of the lockdown period. The general public may not be aware of the plans for the new market have been sort of pushed ahead, as it says here. Again, I think there's been ample publicity for this. It has been on the website. It's also been in the local paper there as well. The application has been sort of advertised in accordance with the planning legislation there. Also, in terms of just answering that point again about when the plans were actually submitted on the online as well, you'll see that within the report, I've actually sort of addressed this later on as well there, sort of talking about when the plans actually went online, and for clarification, the plans, site notes and press advert were all erected / published with the plans on the 26th of June. and being available on our website, not the 8th of July, as stated in the letters of representation there. So we made sure that all those aspects were actually sort of coordinated together to avoid any sort of real points being raised about that particular part, about the publicity given to it, and then the availability of the information on our website. There is one concern from the trader there about the glass roof again in there, and concerned again about the what impact that may have actually upon food sort of sales that they may have in there. Again, this is all part and parcel of the operation of the market there, but so I won't sort of go further into that. 2.5 as well, at further representation received about the question in the value of this replacement proposal and whether or not it is necessary. And also comment on the fact that market is about uniqueness, individuality and character. The proposal is a one-size-fits-all solution which destroys the community feel and creates a sterile environment. You've also got a 2.6 there representation for the local county councillor, Newcastle there as well, and who's in support of the proposal. And I'll just sort of focus on that bit because again, it's important in the context of the overall what's going on within the town centre again there as well, and sort of it represents a major boost for the regeneration of the town and links well to the scheme for the Conge, Hall Quay, Stonecutters Way and North Quay. I'm glad that the views of the market traders have been taken into account in producing what is an ambitious and attractive plan there. So again, the members will be familiar with this, but again, it's seen as part of the sort of the overall regeneration of the town centre in particular there, and forms a very sort of central part to that. Consultations there, again, they're outlined on page 16. No real objections for anybody there again. A couple of conditions proposed from the local highway authority, and this is really about sort of making sure that there's no sort of boundaries sort of being breached with any operators or anything else associated with the market itself. Anglian Water have also sort of commented there and said that there is sufficient sort of capacity, again, as you might expect, within the existing networks system. And again, they've sort of they've looked at the fact there is sort of also 3 options being put forward at the moment to dealing with the drainage. They're happy with the principles of those, but again, they recommend a condition there that no drainage works will commence until a surface water management strategy has been submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority. And it goes on about hard standings again as well. That fits in with really at sort of 2.8, where the local leave flood authority of sort of talking about this is actually below their threshold there, but we would need to sort of safeguard or satisfy ourselves there that the applicant can demonstrate compliance with the National Planning Policy Framework, paragraphs 155 to 165. And I think that then with the Anglian Water sort of condition there, that will then sort of give us a sort of reassurance that we can sort of be satisfied and then sort of complies with that. Page 17, you've then got another number of other sort of consultations responses as well. Norfolk Fire and Rescue Services, no objection there. Norfolk Police and the Counter-Terrorism Security Advisor has made sort of some comments there, concerned obviously about the sort of the roofing on that as well. And maybe the architect would like to sort of comment on that, and also about sort of obviously barriers and what have you there, which would need sort of they're suggesting need to sort of be put in front of the pedestrian areas there to actually sort of reduce the ability of vehicles to drive at crowds through the crowd. But again, matters to a consideration there in terms of the overall scheme of the proposal. I suppose the actual sort of detail, but those will still need to be sort of worked up as we run through the scheme itself. Norfolk County Councils have made a comment there as well. Resilience Officer is happy with it. In terms of the Norfolk County Historic Environment Officer, again, you can read for yourself out 216 really, and it's sort of set out what I was sort of mentioned earlier about this being sort of within the medieval town walls, and markets existed on the site since at least 1200. but again, it's sort of setting out really the context of the historic context there. Is also flagging up the fact that because of that as well, historic context, that again, in the past there's been sort of various shards of medieval pottery and what have you have actually been sort of found within the marketplace there and the surrounding areas. We do, as a sort of within the town itself there, have quite a sort of historic record of archaeological sort of digs and remains within the area there. So this then really sort of builds upon that, but also at the same time a note of precaution, using that sort of historic sort of knowledge really to sort of impose to say really we need to look at this again as well, and has requested that archaeological condition. There's also this application itself will also be in phases there as well, as we no doubt will hear a bit later as well. And I would then sort of say that we would look to sort of modify any conditions actually within sort of a sort of an approval notice there to actually allow for each of these sort of phases to take place, but at the same time also look to satisfy that condition as requested by the archaeological unit. Again, we then go on to the conservation officer as well, and you sort of find that many of those things have been echoed by the historic sort of environment officer as well there, and building upon that. But again, it's all the time it's building up this sort of historic context of it all. And the conservation officer has had no objection to the actual design of the proposal as it stood. Did make a couple of comments about, again, about sort of looking at a bit more detail about sort of emphasizing the actual sort of structure of the building itself there, and to get a little bit more continuity in there. And that's really been sort of taken into account when looking at the revisions to the actual proposal itself there. They're also, and they've sort of mentioned that within the sort of notes at paragraph 2.25 there. And then just running through then, so I'm now moving on to the historic sort of England's comments there. And again, is, you know, what they're really been concerned about is actually sort of the scale of the development more than anything else here, and how it sort of how it fits in the context of what we sort of regard really as sort of a traditional market. And many of the things, and having spoken to him as well about this sort of over the past weeks as well there, it is about sort of trying to sort of get the scale of this sort of building down there. But I think it's now come to the point whereby he accepted that, yes, the treatment of the sort of one sort of big roof around there is can be sort of taken as part of the design, but he has got some sort of design sort of proposals and adjustments to make further to that, but we'll come on to that in a moment there. Again, he's looking at this sort of large expanse of the marketplace, and which I've sort of mentioned a number of times there. But the purpose of going on about this again is the fact that this is also the character of the marketplace is actually this sort of the space that is actually got within this sort of within the town itself there, and the role that actually plays in the character of the town, and also the appearance of the sort of the marketplace as well there. So just running through there, you've got this sort of 2.28 all the way really through on sort of page 20 there. And again, saying how it is the heart of the town there. And it also forms a key part of the High Street Heritage Action Zone, which has been grant aided by Historic England. And they're clearly sort of keen to ensure that any development here complements and reinforces the aims of the Heritage Action Zone to regenerate and restore the local historic character of the area. And what they're also saying is then they were disappointed really that they hadn't been sort of engaged in this earlier on. But as far as I can understand from conservation there, they have been involved in this at an early stage. Maybe not the people who've actually sort of commented on this particular application there. And so Historic England basically supports the thinking behind the design concept the repositioning of the market further to the north, the strengthening of the connections to the east and west, and again the sort of the north and south aspect of it as well, help to relate to the market, to the wider townscape there. So again, these are all positive sort of comments on it. The concept of a more unified design approach to the market structure and a rationalized approach to servicing offers the potential to enhance the quality of space in the space and to provide more coherence and architectural quality to the market itself. So combined with the high quality improvements to the market, the public realm, which I sort of pointed out there earlier, through renewed services and planting, this would make the marketplace a better space for people and to encourage the use of the important public space there. So they then go on to say, despite the positive aspects of the design, the proposed structure would be a radical intervention into the marketplace. Now, someone may say, well, what's wrong with that? A radical intervention there. The building is a sizable structure, notably taller than the existing market and greater in mass. While the marketplace is a generous space, the form of the building is a single structure and with an expansive sloping metal roof, more akin to a warehouse building than the traditional market. So the design is stepped in 3 sections from south to north, but this offers little variety. And we're concerned about how the building occupies the space and would impinge upon views across the marketplace and the impact this would have upon the appreciation of the marketplace as enclosed space framed by the surrounding buildings there. They then talk about the sort of permeability and the views again to the Minster. And talk about the scale and uniformity of the covered market being at odds with the traditional small scale and varied market stalls. It also contrasts with the footprint of many of the traditional buildings which have framed the marketplace there. So based on that, they're also saying then that the proposed market building does not enhance, but rather harms the significance of the conservation area. So having said all that, then sort of brought out early in the report the enhancements actually and the alterations have been made to the building there, and also to the reports that have been submitted with the application in order to address those points, and on those, particularly on those heritage factors there. And we've received a further comment back from Historic England there now, and again they reinforce this sort of comment there that they, which is also sort of shared by the conservation officer as well there, that they've got no objection to actual demolition of the existing market, which in sort of townscape terms and the historic context has little really sort of real value to the marketplace. So there's 2 aspects of it we're actually looking at in terms of this application at the moment. One is actually the demolition, which there's no objection to. The second part is the actual sort of then the replacement marketplace in there. So again, no objection to the actual demolition of the existing marketplace there. And again, they sort of reinforce that. They also sort of recognise now that the actual amendments that have been made to the structure itself there, the permeability terms, what have you there, are plus and beneficial to the building. They now accept as well that you can actually sort of see through the building. And just sort of running through here again. Just running through it and then sort of through to the actual sort of Minster building there. And also the fact that if you are, which the councillors, the applicants are minded to do, is actually have this one single building there, is how can then you then sort of make it more acceptable in sort of townscape terms there. Now, the Historic England are now suggesting really that they're accepting the fact that if you go down this route, then and then compare it with the traditional marketplace, then really what you need to do, what they suggest, is that you actually start to instead of actually having these buildings, the side buildings here actually going up right to the roof of the building there, that you actually have a gap in between the sort of the structures themselves, and then which would then allow you actually to see through the building and help that sort of airflow running through there, and give this sort of recreate this sort of traditional sort of market look that you actually have, and which we actually sort of have currently as well in there. And sort of, and again, I think when you look at this is also English Heritage or Historic England have been sort of referring to a number of different markets around the area, not around the area, around the country and abroad, which again adopt this sort of approach there, whereby the market still exists within the sort of roof structure itself there. Against that, what you then have to say really is that you then sort of look at what's actually being sort of within as part of this proposal, is that again, the services are actually sort of being sort of formed as part of the roof structure there. And I anticipate the architect will sort of bring this out as well, which makes it sort of more difficult to actually sort of have that gap actually within there without sort of a bit more of a radical design. Historic England is sort of saying really that what you need to do, you can actually sort of keep the existing footprint of the building in there, but it's sort of still within that sort of structure, then sort of bring about these design amendments, which they then sort of think will actually be beneficial to the actual proposal itself there. They also mentioned the existing toilet block as well as being sort of a big structure on the end there, and we heard that from one of the objectors earlier on as well. And maybe you can actually sort of relocate the toilet block actually within the building itself there. But around that area again, I think it's the practicalities of it all that maybe the Historic England is not quite familiar with this, because that's where at the moment where all the services and everything else comes into the building or into the structure. And again, if you then sort of look to relocate those, then it will mean obviously a greater expense all round to the actual building itself, and whether or not it actually would enhance the building or not is another matter from that point of view there. So that's where we stand at the moment. They still, from Historic England, still sort of raise that concern about the building itself there, but certainly in terms of the improvements to the building that have been made or that they requested so far and design amendments to it, then they're happier with the proposal as it stands at the moment there. Going back to the report, again, I say they're happier with it, not to say they're completely happy with it, but they're looking for those bits and pieces to be sort of enhanced actually as part of any sort of further design amendments to that. Within the report, then we've sort of then move on at sort of 21, and I'll move through these fairly swiftly there. We've got a number of sort of the core strategy put forward there. No further comments at the moment as well from the environmental health officer. I just sort of mentioned that as well at 2.3. But again, as part of many sort of conditions, we'd need to sort of make sure that all the flues and everything else, details of those are actually sort of submitted as well prior to commencement and development there. At page 21, we'll then sort of talk about the core strategy and the various sort of policies actually within the local plan there, which again, really about sort of looking about sort of sustainable development, supporting the local economy, strengthening our centres, improving the vitality and viability of our town centres and district centres, promoting tourism, leisure and culture. And CS9, they're encouraging well-designed, distinctive places and high-quality design with that as well. And at 3.6 on page 22, CS10 also talks about safeguarding local heritage assets as well there, and protecting the town centres of the conservation areas there and their significance in particular. And again, we then sort of talk about the emerging sort of local plan policy again there. All of these sort of local plan emerging policies there in terms of the weight that you can accord those, the plan has now been submitted to the planning inspectorate. Little objections to those policies, so the weight increases to that, the significance that you can actually give to those policies at this particular time there. 3.9, we've then got the national planning policy framework set out. And again, within that, I highlight the fact again that you've got the golden thread, if you like, that sort of runs through the national planning policy framework there, with those three sort of objectives sort of set out. A, economic objective to help build a strong, responsive and competitive economy. B, the social objective to support the strong and vibrant, healthy communities there. And C, the environmental objective to contribute to protecting and enhancing our natural built and historic environment there. So all of those sort of run through the national planning policy framework. They then tie in really to our sort of local plans, certainly the core strategy and the emergence part 2 local plan there. Part 48, I've just sort of been through that, to the weight that you can actually give to that, those emergence policies as well there. And then just moving on to the highlighting those things in sort of paragraph 48, paragraph 192 of the National Planning Policy Framework. And these are particularly important there, and I'll sort of just hover on those. And again, we've sort of said in the context of applications of members who were aware in the previous sort of applications where we've got a sort of historic context there, that the weight that you actually have to sort of give to these particular policies and the historic policies that we've got within the local plan, but also the legislation within the which I'll refer to a bit later in the report there, but I'll refer to it now there when we're sort of referring to conservation areas and the settings of listed buildings there. And just to sort of bring that out really, so that the in the list of buildings and conservation areas in the Act there, the subject is subject to, the council is subject to section 66 of the Planning and Listed Buildings sort of Conservation Area Act of 1990, which says that in considering whether to grant planning permission for development which affects a listed building or its setting, the local planning authority shall have special regard to the desirability of preserving the building or its setting or any features of special architectural historic interest which it possesses. So this sort of means that members must accord considerable significance and weight to any harm to a listed building or its setting. Then go on again at sort of paragraph 5 as well, to actually highlight there that as the proposal is also in a conservation area, this brings it a similar duty at section 72 of the Act to pay special attention to the desirability of preserving or enhancing the character or appearance of that area. And where you have a listed building in the conservation area, this is me adding to the harm to its setting is automatically a harm to the conservation area as well. So this is why we then sort of come back to this again, and we'll then sort of talk about the response from Historic England and the importance of that in the context of what we're considering here today. Essentially, when you sort of look at the National Planning Policy Framework and those, we've got a sort of paragraph 192 there really, through to sort of 193, 194, 196 and 200. If you can then consider the application in the context of that, then effectively you're carrying out your duty, if you like, of that sort of the Conservation Area and Listed Buildings Act that I sort of mentioned there earlier in that at page 25 there. So, and again, just sort of looking at these parts, really, it's whether or not this, when you look at the significance of the conservation area, whether this proposal and its appearance, whether this proposal then actually sort of impacts upon that significance and appearance of the conservation area. And if it does, as again, whether or not substantial harm or less than substantial harm. Now, when I've been in the context of my view of this and what I brought out within the report there again as well, I've sort of looked at the context of what we're actually looking at in terms of the National Planning Policy Framework itself, but also our policies in there, and then sort of made an assessment of what I think about it. And I think using both the comments from the Historic England, also informed by the heritage statement actually put in with the application there as well. And my consideration of this application is that yes, there is some harm to it, but it's less than substantial harm. And basically what I've then concluded there, that sort of in this particular regard, is that when the context of the National Planning Policy Framework there, that that I believe that really the public benefit of this, and this is where you're looking at paragraph 196 on page 24, that where a development will lead to less than substantial harm to the significance of a designated heritage asset, this harm should be weighed against the public benefits of the proposal, including where appropriate, securing its optimum viable use there. And so my view is that the benefits that sort of come out of this proposal, leaving aside the actual sort of details that we'll come back to on in a moment there, and the form and structure of it there, and the benefits that can actually be brought to the town centre itself there, in terms of the townscape itself, but also the economic benefits and potentially sort of can be had for the town there as well, outweigh that less than substantial harm as sort of that's been sort of identified, but also been identified in the heritage statement, and also to some the Historic England as well, and what they're sort of talking about within their responses to it. So page 27. We then go on to the sort of talk again about the design sort of amendments to the building there. Then it's sort of 523, 524 paragraphs, then sort of talk about the visualizations and what you can sort of see in there. And I've mentioned most of these really running through them at the time. This is looking through from the rows and where we stand at with the marketplace at the moment. So the new design and visualizations there would actually sort of open that up. So from the market row, so you can actually see through to the other side of the marketplace there. And just sort of running through also the visualizations which we've got before, you know, on the site, also sort of show how you can then see through to the Minster as well there. So protecting that sort of view through. Again, as you know, you have to look at this, whether or not you can actually see it quite in that context is another matter. You would see it from this particular angle, and then as you go further back again to the south, you then sort of see through. You'd still sort of see the context of where there's sort of the foreground, really, where the two-day market would be in the car park and beyond that. But again, we would also sort of maintain that sort of look around down to the hospital as well down there, and the other sort of the grade 1 listed building down there. Also off to the left-hand side as well, to the west, we've also got then the listed buildings that then sort of frame the marketplace as well, running around, which is sort of on the side here. And again, you know, this is just sort of really to sort of set it in the context. In terms of the building as well, also it has, as I mentioned earlier, it's been moved across to the east side of to the marketplace there, so you get a greater sort of open sort of area around here as well, and the sort of moving away from the list of buildings that you have in here. You've also got obviously the modern buildings over here as well, which in real terms, in terms of the impact upon the buildings, obviously is less significant than it is actually with those the other ones with the listed buildings there. I mentioned about the setting of the list of buildings and conservation area. Run through that again at page paragraph 2324 and going through there. And then running on to the ventilation extractions strategy on this as well. And then what you find is that the buildings, as I mentioned earlier, most of the sort of, all of the extraction units will be set within the roof of the building. So they won't be sort of setting out above the wall there. And again, this will actually sort of enhance the actual design in the marketplace as well, so that you don't have sort of ad hoc, if you like, sort of ventilation units coming out of those, and it's all sort of in a coordinated fashion there. Each of these units actually within the building as well, and within the structure itself, will also sort of tie into those each of those sort of ventilation sort of and extraction sort of aspects as well in there. So again, it's all uniformed and kept in a sort of neat and tidy fashion. Then talk about sort of running through drainage. I mentioned that again, we've been through all that. No comments from the Highway Authority. Archaeology, I mentioned that as well. I mentioned the representations that we received at paragraph 36 there as well. And on paragraph 542 on page 32. And then just running through from paragraph 5.4, again, just sort of really sort of pulling together all the various strands of the local plan that we have at the moment, and the core strategy at CS7, also the emerging local plan policies as well, just again to put those into context there. And also, so we've got sort of, again, the town centre sort of area, location, retail development, kiosks and stalls, historic environment and heritage, again, all of those have been taken into consideration. I mentioned the National Planning Policy Framework. Also then at 5.2, talk about other material considerations. And again, this is promotion of sort of we've got the town centre master plan, which obviously a number of members have been sort of sitting on and declared their interest about today there. And again, which sort of sets out the 6 key strategic objectives to add to the regeneration of the town centre there. So this is fundamentally, this is very much at the heart of that regeneration of the town centre there. And then sort of move on really to sort of the conclusion of this. And the conclusion is that the proposal is broadly compliant with the existing and emerging local plan and national planning policies there, and that the development provides an opportunity to visually and practically enhance the heart of the town centre, improving access and flexibility of use, with a new design of the marketplace forming a central and vibrant part of the economic and visual enhancement of the town centre. And put in there compatible with the town centre there, and then on to the recommendation, which is to approve the application and subject to the revised plans, which are the ones we've actually sort of seen as I've sort of run through there, and the conditions set out in the report, and consideration of further consultation responses from Historic England there. Now, I mentioned really sort of just to sort of to wind up completely on that, really, that there are a number of sort of aspects of the design, the details of it all that need to be sort of looked at in detail before we can then sort of formally sort of sign this application off there. And I suggest that what we do as part of the looking at those details, there's things like sort of how we sort of deal with sort of the nighttime use and sort of gates and things like that, how those details are actually still to be sorted out, and the final details of the drainage and things like that, that we actually look at those aspects in the context of what Historic England have said at this particular point, and then discuss it further with Historic England with a way to actually sort of find a meeting point on that. Now, there's no guarantee we're actually going to find a general sort of consensus on that, but I think we've got a long way to it. And then as part of those sort of further little details that we can look at those aspects. So it's approval subject to that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Dean, for that detailed report. Any members got any technical questions for the planning officer, please?
Yeah, just bear with me, Chairman. Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I've got 3 technical questions, if I may. The first one is how much further north is it being moved, and therefore how much of the 2-day market area is being lost. That's the first one. The second one is the consideration of the cleaning of the glass roof that's being put on there. How's that going to be achieved? And the third question is what happens to the water runoff from the roof? Because it is a substantial area and there will be water runoff. So what happens to that water? Thank you.
Would you mind if when the architect comes onto that, they sort of answer those particular questions there? Because we've got, obviously at the moment, we're looking at drainage. There's 3 options in terms of drainage there, and just sort of run through those, because they're looking to sort of reuse the existing sort of systems actually under the structure there. But I just wanted to sort of, I think it would be beneficial to understand the latest thinking on that from the architect. And likewise, the other bits and pieces you're talking about as well there. So I'm not sort of deflecting that, but I would like the architect just to sort of bring those aspects out, really.
Of course, that's fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I don't have any more hands raised.
Okay, thanks, Amy. So I call forward Doreen Owen, the agent for the council, to come forward, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. I am Doreen. I am a director and architect at Clapham Farrants, and we've been working with the council to develop the proposals for the marketplace. Did you want me to go through what I had prepared, or would you like me to answer any questions that perhaps Dean had raised or anybody had raised?
Just bear with me, Doreen, 2 seconds. So Doreen, if you wanted to answer the questions first, and then we'll start your 5 minutes to present to the committee, and then I'll just let you know when you've got 30 seconds if you want to answer the questions that were raised first.
Yeah.
And then we'll start your 5 minutes, if that's okay.
Yep, absolutely fine. So in terms of the first question, which was how much further north does the building move? It's to the first block, so it lines up with Ferry Away Row. So in terms of the 2-day market, the area that is lost by the development is actually gained to the south. So the idea of the design is that it incorporates both the 6-day and the 2-day market, so that they can work more closely together. Which was something that was picked up in early consultations, and it sits within the statements talking about how the design is developed where it's got to. In terms of cleaning of the glass roof, so the roof is glazed, and it is, excuse me, it is both glazed and is proposed to be a zinc roof. The roof is designed in the way that it is so that it can be cleaned by a person with a long reach hose. In terms of general cleaning, because it's recognised that being in such a central part of the market, regular cleaning and maintenance is very important, and it has formed part of the sort of fundamental parts of the design. In terms of replacement, there will be access that you can get onto the roof, not for anybody, but in case you need to replace anything or make any repairs. So to reiterate, the cleaning of the building and how it is maintained has formed a fundamental part of the design. And then the final question related to water runoff. So yes, there is a substantial roof, and 3 options were presented in the drainage strategy. The preferred option is a SUD system, so it's a sustainable urban drainage system, which is also the preference for Anglia Water. So that would be collecting the roof runoff and allowing it to dissipate underground rather than connecting it into the main system. However, options were produced, and this is all subject to a detailed site investigation, that were members minded to approve the application. It is something that is sort of next on the list to undertake, and then would be subject to a planning condition to make sure that was undertaken, and the design was approved by Anglia Water and by the councillors themselves. I hope that answers the questions.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doreen. So if you wanted to start your 5-minute presentation to members now, and I'll just let you know when you've got 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good afternoon, everybody. I think Dean has picked up quite a lot of the points that I was originally going to make, but for the record, my name is Doreen. I'm the architect on the scheme. And as was noted, the town centre master plan identifies the marketplace itself as one of the key priority areas for the town. The town represents a largely unrealised opportunity for investors, developers and operators, but there's the opportunity for the town is to ensure its regeneration is inclusive, recognises local culture and identity, and retains and enhances the services and amenities that local people have very good reason to value. We have recognised from the beginning that this is a significant project for the town, and we have developed the design in conjunction with the town centre working group, with various members, with various offices, including the conservation offices, and aspects of the design have been discussed and worked through, which include things that the Historic England have raised relating to scale, materials, and the like. So the key point for us is to make sure that the proposals are a significant improvement on the existing, but that overall the market needs to provide traders and customers of the 6-day market. They need better facilities. There needs to be a better integration between the 6-day and 2-day markets themselves. And it's recognised quite early on that there is a need and there is a want for a larger event space at the south end of the marketplace, which predominantly led to the market moving further north. The location of the market has taken into account various factors, including the application of phasing of the development. So naturally, the market as it exists, there are a number of businesses that operate on a daily basis, and by moving the market slightly further north, we're able to build the proposal in phases to minimise the disruption to the stallholders, whilst also allowing the new building to be built. It creates an enlarged South Market Square area and allows the building to align with all the roads. So this includes the amendments that were made following discussions with Historic England. Provides the opportunity for internal eating areas within the structure, and it allows us to use the existing services that already exist on site. The 6-day market, the proposal is for flexible and contemporary stalls, well-lit spaces in between, and seating areas. It offers a variety of spaces to cater for different uses that are naturally ventilated and easy to maintain. At an early stage, it was very clear that the market square to the south is heavily used and offers a positive outside space. We wanted to build on that by creating a shaded open area to the south that can be used as a seating space, but also allows an area for the 2-day markets traders to be involved within the area under the main structure. We believe the project will create a varied and vibrant area that people want to visit, people want to work in, and people want to live in. I think it will positively contribute to the wider regeneration of the town and the town centre. Providing covered seating areas gives an all-weather opportunity for the space that currently does not have. This can extend the market season and offer space for speciality events throughout the year. The design itself is narrower than the existing market, as Dean mentioned, which allows a greater area on the west side where the predominance for the historic buildings and listed buildings are. Careful consideration for a variety of sizes and types of stalls have been taken into account. And we wanted to create something that was flexible, that will not just be for now, but would be here for the future of the town. So it's flexible, it can be expanded, it suits the needs for people now. There was extensive engagement that was undertaken, and there were a few key items that came out of that, which included, so there was a public engagement event in July 2019. Concerns and feedback were collected and organised in certain themes, which have been taken into account.
During 30 seconds remaining.
Thank you. These include the canopy, sitting and eating areas, an upgrade of the existing wider setting, parking, significantly seagulls, and how this could be addressed in a new building. So I'd just like to say that I hope that you can see that this is a regeneration scheme that will positively contribute to the future of Great Yarmouth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doreen. Is there any technical questions for the agent, please, from any members?
Chairman, I can confirm I have no hands raised.
Thanks, Doreen, for your time and your report. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I now ask, are there any objectors wish to speak on this application, please?
Chairman, we've not been made aware of any objectors wishing to speak on the application.
Thank you, Sammy. And are there any ward councillors who wish to speak on this application?
Chairman, I can confirm I have no hands raised.
Okay, then. So at this point, we'll move to the debate. And what do the councillors think, please?
Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a question for Dean, really. Page 21, 3.5, policy CS9, and page 23, paragraph 127, which is the NPPF. Just saying there, as such, the council will ensure that all new developments while within the borough reflect the local character. And 127 are sympathetic to local character and history, including surrounding built environment. Now, if we're going to build, we can't keep building retrospectively, we must build for the future. And I actually quite like the design. I think it's very innovative. So I suppose it's reconciling those two aspects of the planning application. And would I be right in saying that if we'll go to page 24, paragraph 200 of the NPPF, to reconcile those issues, it says, particularly on the third line, assets to enhance or better reveal their significance. So by being such a modern design, it would increase the significance of the heritage of the surrounding buildings.
That's one interpretation. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, I can confirm I have no more hands raised.
Okay, then. The recommended proposal is to recommend for approval. Have we got a proposer and a seconder, please?
I propose that. Councillor Lawn.
I'm happy to second it.
Oh, okay, thank you. So at this point, Sammy will do the roll call. If you can just say for or against, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Annison.
For.
Councillor Flaxman-Taylor.
For.
Councillor Freeman.
For.
Councillor Lawn.
For.
Councillor Mogford. Councillor Mogford.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Myers.
For.
And Councillor T. Wright.
For.
Thank you, Chairman. I can advise that that is approved as per the recommendations.
Thanks ever so much. And that's an exciting step for the next stage forward for the marketplace. And thanks, everyone. Okay, then we move to number 5 now, which is land off Foster Close, Ormsby, St Margaret. And that is with Chris Green.
Sorry, Chairman, if I can just bring back the panellists that we put back to attendees before Chris starts, please. No, you're okay. Chris, sorry, could I just get you to stop sharing the screen for 2 seconds because I can't get everybody back. Thank you, sorry, I'll be 2 seconds. Okay, so Councillor Wainwright, I can see you. Councillor Bird. Yeah, Councillor Hammond's back. Councillor Williamson and Councillor Fairhead, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Lovely,
Sorry about
thank
that,
you.
but my screen just kept losing before.
That's okay, not a problem. Thank you. So we have everybody back, Chairman. We can start now, Chris. Thank you. Chris, you're muted.
Unmute. There we go.
Thank you.
Slideshow. From beginning. Okay. Good afternoon, and sorry about the usual issues with the equipment. So this application off Foster Close. If I just put my cursor, hang on, I better just get the pointer options up, laser pointer. So if I put my pointer onto the aerial, you can see it's describing where Foster Close is, which is a small stub off Simmons Avenue with a clear ransom strip left by the previous developer in anticipation, perhaps, of something like this being proposed. So the redlined area is the site in question. As you can see, it's quite well planted to the peripheries with a long hedgerow on the east side and considerable trees forming part of the back garden of number 74 Station Road. I'll just move on, I think. Hang on. Was it not giving me the next arrow keys? Okay. All right, so we have a site plan shown at a different angle, unfortunately, but that was the best way to put it onto the screen, and a indicative proposal. And I have to say, this is a very indicative proposal, but perhaps what's most significant about it is the fact that it does show the access through and an existing layout for properties already approved under a previous application within the control of the same applicant. So this is an outline application. All matters other than access are reserved. So what you see before you by way of a plan is indicative, and it isn't necessarily how we would like to see it developed in the fullness of time at reserved matters. Hopefully I've tried to make that clear to both the agent and the applicant as things have gone on, but of course it is not a consideration at this time. I mean, one of the things is that these are quite large properties, so the type and mix isn't really right for our policies if it was to be taken in that form. One of the things that is established, however, by the application is the numbers, because clearly one has to have a Section 106 agreement at outline stage for affordable housing, and indeed for other matters such as contributions towards library service, etc. And all those are based upon numbers. So essentially we would be accepting that this was the 33 additional, and rather interestingly, the 7 that have already got consent but haven't been built would, under the emergent policy that hasn't been objected to and therefore carries considerable weight. I have identified the policy number in the documentation, and I can't quite recall it now, but it does mean that we would actually be looking at affordables based on 40 dwellings rather than 33, and therefore a contribution of 8 rather than 6 point something or other. That is all clearly stated in the report. I'll move on to the next slide because it's, oh, hang on, no, use the keys, right. location of water bodies. You'll see that there's a small pond shown in the other site to the north. That pond is retained, contrary to comments made by the Norfolk County Council ecologist in a recent response. That becomes a significant point. I will go into that in a moment or two. I'll also show you that there's another water body on Yarmouth Road down here, and that too is significant in terms of the fact that in a 2017 newt survey, they found a single newt. Actually, I think I have now actually come on to that, so maybe I should expand on that. The 2017 study also showed, in fact, sorry, the recent preliminary ecological appraisal that was submitted late in the processing of this application at the request of the county ecologist did water testing of the pond number 1 on 20 samples looking for DNA for great crested newts, and nothing was found there. So we have a pond that is inert here and a pond that is within potential travel distance for newts to the south. And this is a matter that came up in a response from the county sent through on the 3rd of the 9th after the report had been written. So it's something that does become significant. However, as I say, that they in that report, or in that response, should I say, criticised the age of the survey of Pond 2 and said it didn't have any population data. Well, actually it did. It had a population data that said there was 1 newt found. This does mean that we shouldn't, according to the ecologist, be seeking to approve the application as it stands. And so you may wonder why it still has a recommendation for approval of it. Well, the reason for that is it's an outline application, so there's very adequate opportunity to carry out surveys at the right time of year for newts. Unfortunately, we're past the right time of year this year, and indeed we're also past the right time of year for trimming back the grassland within the application site, which is currently an open field. So I consider that it is possible to put a condition in place that does protect the newt interest such as it is. And there's a further thought that comes to mind, and that is that by the time the reserved matters application is made, there will be another manner by which the applicant is likely to be able to overcome newt issues, insofar as the government have trailed a concept whereby individual newts will not be taken into account, but instead payments will be able to be made by developers towards the enhancement of environment for newts elsewhere. A very radical change, perhaps, in the way that these things have been looked at in the past. Anyway, I'll move on. Justification for recommending approval for something that is outside current physical limits. This is the proposal map associated with the new draft plan. And you'll see that there are 2 proposed allocations of land within Ormsby Village. OT1 to the south, which is on grade 2 agricultural land, and OT2, which is on ungraded land. Now, it should be borne in mind that this proposal site is grade 1 agricultural land, so that does call into question its reason for an approval statement. However, you'll also note that it is actually quite well related to the local facilities identified on the proposal map. In other words, the travel distance along Station Road is not significantly different to, for example, the travel distances from site OT2. And there is a continuous footway along Station Road to this location. Oh dear, moving on. I've taken a few photographs around the site. I haven't included any illustrations of the indicative designs because, quite simply, they're not relevant at this time. This shows you the small ransom strip at the end of Foster Close. What it also shows you is that there are 2 points of access onto Foster Close for neighbours, and they have objected to the idea of more traffic using this. Although, of course, we already have an approval for traffic associated with 7 homes as approved. So it's an increase from 7 to 40 that would be using this stub, and county highways have not objected to that. View looking the other way, showing the junction. Actually, I should have taken some photographs standing at the point of junction, which shows it is on a slight, on the outside of a slight curve, which does give it very good visibility. View within the site, or not, sorry, not within the site, but within the land to the north of the site, showing the site for the 7 properties on the garden land that have already been approved, and the boundary of that site with number 74. This is a shot of the site seen through the east side boundary hedge. And as you can see, it is a formerly cropped field that has been grassland for a couple of years. And just to give some context, I did put a couple of shots in of other properties nearby. This is one of the larger properties at the very end of the eastern end of development on Station Road. And that's the next one in a relatively large property. I'm afraid when they put the photographs onto our system, they get cropped to a square format, which means that you don't get the full image. But I think it gives you an idea of the sort of scale of the properties. And this is a shot of the farmer's field to the east of the site, showing you the boundary along the eastern edge of the site between the 2 fields. So key points, policy and location. I suppose actually before I do that, I ought to just mention section 5 and the consultation responses. We have had a considerable number of neighbour responses and objection from the parish council. The neighbour responses at section 5.2 did also mention most of the points that are raised in 5.1. So perhaps I should have said, and the following summarised points in addition, because a lot of people made the points that are made here. And then if I go on to the various responses from consultees, you'll see that the county highways don't object to the use of the Foster close stub to provide that level of access, and have suggested a number of conditions. I think initially they were sceptical because they were worried about whether there was a continuous footway along Station Road. There is one. It has been put in very recently, so recently in fact it doesn't appear on Street View, hence the confusion in these times of COVID, where officers from the county council don't get out to site very much. The Historic Environment Survey have suggested archaeological conditions. The local lead flood authority, now this is an important response that has just come through today. We had them continuing to object to the flood risk assessment that has been done by the applicant's agent. However, today I have a letter dated the 15th confirming that because the clarification of the infiltration rate has now been received and justification for the use of a higher infiltration rate than previously proposed, they are now removing their objection, providing conditions are attached. And the condition is quite a lengthy and technical one, but it requires further technical information on infiltration testing along the length of the proposed infiltration basin, provision of surface water attenuation storage sized and designed to accommodate the volume of water generated at all rainfall events, etc., etc. I won't read the entire letter out. It is very much an engineering technical letter, but in essence, the matters that we'd been suggesting in the recommendation with the report that further agreement of the local lead flood authority was required have now been addressed. And what is more, I have a letter also received today from the Internal Drainage Board, who it's not a material planning consideration that you need a license to discharge to watercourses from the Internal Drainage Board, because that's under separate legislation. Nevertheless, I have had confirmation from the IDB that says, following a conversation with Rupert Evans regarding the detailed drainage strategy of this site, I can confirm that although surface water discharge to a waterfall course is now confirmed, the proposed discharge does not require land drainage consent from the board. we appreciate the proposed discharge will be attenuated on the site to the greenfield runoff rate and request that we are reconsulted if this changes. So in other words, there would be no need to acquire a license if the greenfield runoff rate is not exceeded, and that is the whole principle of the design that's been arrived at. One of the neighbours had objected because she had noticed that there was a new pipe being put into the ditch, but that pipe is essentially to pick up existing drainage within the site and to discharge to that ditch at no greater than the current greenfield runoff rate. And as I say, that has been found to be acceptable. So moving on to the key points. Policy and location, I think I've more or less covered that in the sense that it is contrary to policy because it's outside the physical limits, but given the 5-year supply situation, it is certainly one of the more preferable proposals that has been put forward. Yes, the 5-year land supply situation has to be taken balanced to some extent because we know it's close to being 5 years out of date, and that the new plan, once accepted, and indeed the new method of calculation, which would become enacted in December, would essentially reduce the housing need, but at the same time, by allowing permissions for things like this, we are also keeping up our rate of delivery to satisfy the reduced need. So it still seems sensible to, or in the planning balance, necessary to recommend an approval of it. So then we have existing pattern of development. It does fit quite well with the fact that it is bordered on 3 sides by current development. Landscape impact and boundaries, well, as long as we can retain the existing boundaries and enhance as necessary where there are gaps, its landscape impact is going to be minimal. And it's, in addition, of course, it's difficult to make a full judgment on that until we have a reserved matters application. So I've said it's an outline with only access determined. And I've also mentioned the section 106 requirements with regard to combined sites, let's say, where we have the application for 7 and this one for 33, and we should be therefore looking at it as a 40 unit site. I have now also mentioned the matters with regard to the newts on the site outside the applicant's control and how we might condition that to ensure that the site has been newt fenced, counts carried out, and essentially that matter mitigated before the first reserved matters application. And indeed, the condition I'm suggesting would make reference to the before the first reserved matters application is made to provide that protection. Flood zone 1, but SUDS issues have now been resolved, as I said before. So moving on to the recommendation, it's to approve subject to Section 106 agreement, flood issues having been resolved, and to put a condition on to be submitted at the time of the first reserved matters application, as I've just said. We obviously need the outline timing condition, the reserved matters condition, archaeology, the mineral planning condition. Perhaps I haven't really mentioned that, and perhaps I should. The site contains underlying mineral deposits that are capable of being exploited for building purposes. The mineral planners have asked for a condition which just asks that this is investigated at the time when the site's opened up for development, and that a report is done as to what can be used by way of aggregate on site. They do accept the sterilisation of the remainder of the aggregate deposit. They haven't required that we don't develop the site for that reason. I also asked for or looked to place the county highways recommendations for conditions, and in addition, I always like to put an EV electric vehicle charging condition in these days. Environmental health conditions are required for contaminated lands, hours of work, and air quality, although I suggest the air quality one would be by way of a note, as this is covered by health and safety at work legislation. But the hours of work condition, given that this is a reasonably large site, does become significant, given that if the site development takes a reasonable period of time, it does become something of an amenity threat to the neighbours. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Just before we go to any technical questions, I've just got to quickly swap to a different ThinkPad because mine has gone out of update in a moment or two. So we just got
need to do anything to get rid
we've got to just swap it over. If you just
Yep.
bear with us.
Chairman, I just need Chris to stop sharing his screen and then I can change you over.
Okay, right.
Just bear with me. Okay.
Right.
There
I'm
we
back
go.
on. Sorry about that, everybody. Yeah. So if we now go to the any technical questions for Chris Green, please.
Yep. Councillor T. Wright.
Yes, just a couple of points. One is it's a point of contention of mine on every application. We just seem to be using a grade 1 agricultural land up willy-nilly, and there just seems to be this report about there's plenty of land. Well, at one time there's not going to be enough land, and I'm just very concerned that we're using up the amount of land that we are for building purpose. So I've got a great deal of concern there. The question that I want to raise with the officer is in regard to a neighbourhood plan. Is Ormsby in the process of putting together a neighbourhood plan? And if so, how far have they progressed?
Yes, I understand there is a plan being progressed, but my understanding is that it's got no further than identifying the area of the plan. It's certainly not one that is anywhere near being a material consideration in this case. I did note that one of the persons writing an objection made reference to it and said this is contrary to the Ormsby neighbourhood plan. Or sorry, this is premature because we don't have a neighbourhood plan. Now, of course, the problem with that is nearly every application we have could be considered to be premature to neighbourhood plans if they aren't in place. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. That's okay.
Okay, Councillor Myers.
Thank you, Sammy. Yes, Chair, just a technical one with page 40, the parish council's objections. It's the last paragraph regarding vehicles deliver aggregates and materials. How accurate is that valuation of the ability for those vehicles to use Station Road? Because they're saying that we'll be unable to, and of course, if aggregate vehicles can't use it, then nothing can be built.
Sorry, Chris, you're muted.
Sorry.
Yes.
Thanks. I suppose one has to ask the question, how were the other houses and estates around there built if aggregate lorries couldn't get in? And furthermore, with any luck, if we're in a site where there's mineral resources, i.e. aggregates that can be exploited, it may be that less material needs to be brought to site in this instance. Indeed, that may have been the case in other sites that were developed historically. I simply wouldn't know that. Thank you.
Sorry, so I'm not clear. I know the previous application was approved for those houses. So was that a consideration in the previous application with the 7 houses being built that aggregate vehicles will be able to, not just aggregate vehicles, I mean, you know, vehicles delivering bricks and blocks and various things like that would be able to access Station Road? It's just their objection. I mean, is it just an objection or is it accurate?
Well, all I can say is I don't know. I haven't been around long enough to know the intimate application or intimate details of the application that was made for the 7 units. But it's self-evident that they were built. Oh, sorry, they haven't been built. But it's self-evident that the estate, which is maybe 100 units plus off Simmons Avenue, was constructed, did involve the import of materials, must have come along Station Road. Sorry, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. I have had quite a lot of discussions with the officer. I'm very concerned that a lot of the information is only now just becoming available. And I just would like if he could just reconfirm, because I've had 2 comments from concerned residents who live to the south of the application site, because the application site drains to the south, and you've seen the plans on the presentation that the water does drain off the site down through a series of ditches into the pond on Yarmouth Road, which is connected to Dairy Farm. Both parishioners have been concerned that there was excess water could possibly come down and cause flooding, which we have already had, and Yarmouth Road has been flooded. Now, I understand, Chris, that you have now got confirmation, because there seemed to be contradicting information as to whether this was taking into account a 10-year storm or a 100-year storm, and also on the percolation rate. Can you just confirm that? Because members of the public will be listening.
Sorry. Yeah, I must confess I'm not a drainage expert, but the point is the local lead flood authority does often, when we have planning applications, spend quite a bit of time working with the developer's flood engineer to come up with a workable solution. In other words, it's often not the first iteration of the calculations that's proved to be acceptable. It is a fairly detailed technical matter, but as I say, I have got today that confirmation from the local lead flood authority that as far as they're concerned, it's acceptable, because the runoff rate that would be predicted at any given flood event is no greater than the current greenfield runoff rate. Now, that's presumably the case for any degree of flooding. In other words, if you have a 1 in 10-year storm, or a 1 in 100-year storm, or a 1 in 1,000-year storm, the notional runoff rate will be a particular figure in its undeveloped form. So the work that has been done has now demonstrated to the satisfaction of the local lead flood authority that the runoff rate is no greater under any of those given circumstances than it is currently. And that is the best we can ask for, it would seem. Thank you.
Chairman, I can confirm I have no more questions.
Okay, thanks, Chris, for that report. We don't have any agent to speak on this application, but we do have, I believe, 3 objectors. And the first one on my list is Mrs. Anderson.
Chairman, Mrs. Anderson hasn't joined the meeting.
Right.
So if we move to Miss Kathari first, please.
Yes, yeah, that's fine. Mrs. Kathari.
Hello.
Hello, Mrs. Kafari. So the chairman at his discretion has allowed objectors to this application to speak for 2 minutes today.
Okay, thank you.
So if you would like to start, I will let you know when there's 30 seconds remaining.
Okay, right.
Thank you.
We have residents in our road that have lived here quite contentedly for decades, and they are now selling up and moving away. This is disrupting their lives and uprooting themselves from their beloved homes, friends, family and community, and the proposed development is causing no end of anxiety and stress to everybody here. Our well-being will be shattered not only by the construction of the dwellings, but the ensuing noise, sweeping car headlights and the invasion of privacy that all 40 homes will bring. The trees and the pond have preservation orders in place, and the trees and pond are home to deer, owls, rabbits, wild birds and various waterfowl, and bats which are protected under English law, themselves and their habitat. What will happen to them? Will they be rehomed or killed to accommodate the new houses? Foster Close is a single width, short access road not able to accommodate 2 passing vehicles. I believe that highways have been consulted and have deemed the road adequate for that from their office chairs. They've considered that the garages, have they considered that the garages of both 2 Foster Close and Simmons lead onto the proposed access point? This could cause issues with the safety of the residents, quite rightly being able to leave their homes without the possibility of being T-boned. It's reasonable to think that each of the residents of the new proposed homes would have 2 cars each. Based on 1 car journey per vehicle per day over a year, that's 48,180 journeys for 33 homes. And for 40 homes, it would be 58,400 journeys, passing by your windows or your children's bedrooms. Would you be happy with this? This doesn't include post, courier, utilities, refuse collection, etc. The construction of the properties will bring thousands of heavy goods vehicles and will be thundering down our little road, and for how long? And the tradespeople, will they be parking on site or in our streets, outside our homes, on the curbs and creating mayhem? Station Road will be congested with deliveries, making it hazardous for people walking out and for our children on their way to school.
30 seconds remaining, Julie.
The owner of the land has for decades submitted plans for the council, but has never acted upon it, but used his actions as a cruel sword waving above our heads, causing upset and boasting that he has people at the council. How much longer will you continue to condone his bullying tactics? At what point will you say no more, or just keep taking his money for submitted plan after plan after plan? And if so, you are complicit in his behaviour. Land around our villages is being grabbed and developed at an alarming rate. And we make our lives here because we love our villages. For all their
Julie,
charm,
that is your 2 minutes. 2 minutes up. If you could just quickly finish up, please. Thank you. Carry on, Julie. You can finish up.
Oh, thank you. Land around our villages is being grabbed at and developed at an alarming rate. And we make our lives here because we love our villages for all their charm, benefits, safety, community and way of life. Please don't destroy that. Surely the welfare of the residents and preserving the way of life for now and our children is to be a huge consideration, or is profit more important to you? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Qatari. Are there any councillors who have got any questions for the objector, please? Just raise your hand. Thank you.
Chairman, I can confirm I have no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Mrs. Qatari, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. I now call on Mr. Roberts, who was on my list. Next, Mr. Roberts.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Thanks, Mr. Roberts.
Yeah. Following on from the officer's plan that he put up to begin
sorry,
with.
Mr. Roberts, you'll have 2 minutes, and I'll let you know when there's 30 seconds remaining. Okay.
Okay. The first photos he put up was of Foster Close, and there was a car parked down there. That's just one car on one side. What's going to happen if someone else parks on the other side? There'll be no access rights down there. My main concern is Highways Department seems to have passed this to say it's okay, but has anyone from the Highways Department actually come along and visited the site at all? Because not only is Foster Close very narrow to get onto the proposed development, but Station Road is very narrow in itself, and this was brought up at the Ormsby Parish Council meeting about this planning application earlier this year. The roadside, the sides of the road have narrowed considerably over the years that I've been here, and it's difficult to pass with 2 vehicles now, just being ordinary cars, let alone more transit type vans or indeed lorries that are going to get to this site coming up and down Station Road. That map also showed on there that there's 2 other proposed sites within the village of Ormsby that are recommended for development. They seem to me to be more suitable for development than this application, which effectively is a backyard development. And I just think that the other points that have been taken into account, or seem to have been mentioned but not taken into account, the ones that Ormsby Parish Council brought up originally. The county ecologist, which has been explained about, had the objection to the plan. The drainage recalculation, that seems to us who don't really know, I appreciate fully, that seemed to be recalculated to come up with an answer that was suitable to get it passed. And overall, again, this has been touched on, what's to stop both sites being revised if this plan is passed? And
Roberts, 30 seconds remaining.
The layout of this will be totally revised, and obviously we've got the loss of privacy, the loss of our privacy, invasion of our privacy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Is there any members got any questions for Mr. Roberts, please? If you could raise your hand.
Chairman, I can confirm I have no hands raised.
Okay, thanks, Emmy. Thanks, Mr. Roberts, for your time and your input. Thank you.
Okay.
I now move to the next person, which is Mr. Sparks. Are you there?
All right there. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, Chairman, just so everybody is aware, Mr. Sparks is with Mr. Roberts, so their name will come up as the same, but Mr. Sparks can hear us, so we're good to go.
Yes.
Okay, thanks for your time. Yeah, for me, I'm just going to sort of add to basically what's been said. For me, the invasion and loss of privacy is massive, especially with that layout the way it is, because I live at 17 Simmons Avenue, and I've basically got the row of terraced houses of a look at my house. I also very concerned about the loss of habitation for the wildlife, especially down the side of at the back of our properties, which are hedgerows and trees, which have bats. And the way the layout is, there would be light pollution, which would scare these creatures away, if you know what I'm saying, so we'd lose that. The overpopulation again, for me, the use of the road access, has anybody from the highways looked at the start of Station Road, both ends, is quite congested. So as it's got bigger and more houses have been built on there, it's got a lot more usage. I don't feel the ecological survey is sufficient, and I'd like to challenge that. And I don't think the drainage survey is sufficient, and I would like to challenge that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sparks. Is there any members got any questions for Mr. Sparks, the objector, please? Raise your hand.
Chairman, I can confirm I have no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. I understand Mrs. Anderson is there. Is she? She's dialing. Have we got a Mrs. McKay, or is she not? No.
No, Chairman, Mrs. McKay did send her apologies this morning. She was unsure whether she was going to be able to make it, but she had passed her comments on to Mrs. Kathari. Mrs. Anderson is trying to dial in, so if members are happy to just give Mrs. Anderson another minute, IT are trying to contact her now to see if she is trying. She has said she's trying to dial into the meeting, so if members are happy just to bear with us for one moment, please.
Yep.
Thank you. The live stream will continue, so if members, if you just mute yourselves, but keep your cameras on, please. That would be helpful. Councillor Myers, do you have a question?
Yes, whilst we're waiting for the phone call, is a question that's just sprung to mind I'd like to ask Chris. Does he know exactly how wide Foster Close Road is from curb to curb?
I can't answer that question with all honesty. It looks to me to be a 4.5 metre wide road from experience. It may or may not be. But clearly the county highways do know the width of their roads. They have that infrastructure information. And so that it is certainly designed as an estate road rather than it being designed as a private drive. It was clearly put in with the intent of being able to exploit the land to the rear of it. You know, you just know that that's how the developer thought when they developed Simmons Avenue and Foster Close. Otherwise, they wouldn't have put it in that way.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's just that I think there is a limit to development of an area regarding a road that's under 4.5 metres wide. If it's over 4.5 or 4.5 and over, you can have up to 40 properties. But if it's under 4.5 metres wide, if I am correct in that thinking, then that would negate such a development.
Yeah, you're probably right. I know that there used to be estate design standards that Norfolk County Council used many years ago when I was involved in architecture in Norfolk, but I'm not sure what their current standards are. But clearly we have a response from County Highways which says they are content with the use of that for the 40 that have been proposed.
Mr. Roberts, unfortunately, I have acknowledged that you have your hand raised, but unfortunately, as there were no member questions when you spoke, I can't take any more questions from you, I'm afraid.
Can you hear me, Sammy?
Yeah, I can, but unfortunately, we can't take any more questions or from yourselves.
An answer to my question: did anyone from the Highways Department actually visit the site and do that calculation? They seem to have made that decision, that judgment, from their office without coming along to look at Station Road and Foster Close and Simons Avenue. That's the point I'm making.
Okay, thank you. We're just going to give Mrs. Anderson one more minute to see if she can log on. Mrs. Anderson, can you hear me? Mrs. Anderson?
Hello.
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 Hello. We can hear you now.
Oh, hi there.
Hi. So Mrs. Anderson, you have 2 minutes, and I will let you know when there's 30 seconds remaining. Okay.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Penny Anderson. I live at 41 Yarmouth Road. I'm on the south border, Gallows. I'm having trouble with the drainage. I've spoken to Chris yesterday and was listening to reassurances, and I've heard the meeting so far regarding the drainage, and Lucy Perry is now okay. That's all fine. The main problem I have is that at the moment the Greenfield site is approximately 120 metres long. There is one drainage pipe discharging into one small area of ditch. The ditch at the moment overflows we have had sewage coming out in flooded times, and have had problems with it. I just want reassurance that the fact that although it's greenfield runoff average rate, that's all fine, but when it's concentrated with one pipe going into one small area on one ditch, that at the moment is going uphill to the pond that it's supposed to drain in, because drainage ditches have not been maintained.
30 seconds remaining, Mrs. Anderson.
The drainage ditches at the moment are full of rubbish, long weeds, they're on private property and are not being maintained. Doesn't seem to be anything that the council can do about that either. I'm a bit more worried at the moment that the land, the back of our houses is going to be even more flooded than normal, basically due to the concentrated one discharge pipe. That would be nice if that was addressed for me. Thank you.
You're muted, Chairman, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mrs. Anderson. Are there any members got any questions for Mrs. Anderson, please?
Chairman, I can confirm I have no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Anderson, and thank you for your persistence to get through so you can speak. Thank you. I understand there's nobody from the parish council who wishes to speak on this application, but moving to ward councillors and Councillor Jeff Freeman. Are you there, Jeff?
Yeah, I am. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, members, you obviously can see that there is considerable concern over this proposal. And I think a lot of it is down to confusion. And I've had a number of people contact me. My main concern is that although this is an application which is only for an access and for an outline, what is being shown is what people think they're going to get. And I would say, first of all, that, you know, I'm not going to predetermine the application, but looking at the facts, I've lived here 50 years. I saw Foster Close being built, and I've always believed that at some time there would be a development. We have to remember that the background is that the applicant has made numerous applications for access to try and get to build in that area, and has been now roughly successful with the application for the 7 properties. This has gone on for maybe 15 years, but not a single brick has been laid. And these people have had this sword of Damocles over their head the whole time. We then get an application in, and bear in mind, most of these people are laymen. I'm lucky that I'm now learning planning policy and understanding what is correct and what isn't. But when you look at some of the design, obviously people are going to be completely concerned. The loss of habitat. And again, if you go on the Borough Council website, as I said to Chris earlier, when I asked about the watercourse, even today, we're only getting information about this application. And one of the biggest concerns, as I've obviously heard and the parish council said, was that of the highways. I do believe that Foster Close was built with the intention of being a stub that might end up as a ransom strip. And obviously it has, because the 7 have got application approval. Station Road goes to the, if you go to the east, you can get down on the footpaths, down to the village, the church and the shops and everything else. If you go to the right, there is a trod that was put in by the parish council. It was a 50-50 partnership with Norfolk County Council, and you get to the playing field. There, the road is, as you'll see in the parish council's submission, 2 cars can just pass. If you meet a van or one of the white van man or a vehicle, you cannot pass. It would be criminal if we brought all the aggregate in for this development to come down through that end of Station Road. We can't bring it in through the village. That is unbelievable. So it's really important that we look at it. And I visited the site with a Norfolk County Council Highways officer recently. And one of the problems, as pointed out by one of the residents, is that the The verge banks have not been cut back for many years by highways. In fact, they even protrude over the drains. And not being over the drains, that means that the water can't get away, and it exacerbates the situation. So the access to the site is bad. Again, the ecology report, if you look at it on the website, you would think that they were against, but we've now had further information from Chris. Loss of habitat is a big concern to the residents. And again, as I say, this is very confusing to the layman. My other concern is that we talk about Section 106 monies. We're going to be asked to give money to the Education Authority. Well, that's good. We need schools. And the library service has come in for a divvy for a few thousand. The people who, if this is approved, the people who live and work there will use the roads every day. They won't necessarily use the library. And I feel there should be a consideration of a considerable 106 contribution towards some form of traffic calming measures on Station Road. Station Road is now a rat run for people coming from Hemsby and further north to cut through Ormsby, to get to Filby, to cut off the corner and get onto the Norwich Road. So in conclusion, if you look at some of the policies, it talks about sustainability, that we should look for well-designed and sustainable developments. I have to pass on to you the comments of a number of my parishioners that I'm representing, that this needs to be very much reassessed before a serious consideration is made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman. Are there any members got any questions for the Ward Councillor, please? Raise your hand.
Confirm I have no questions, Chairman.
Okay, Councillor Freeman, thanks very much. Thanks for your time. So now at this point, we now move to the committee debate and decision and what your thoughts are. So it's over to you.
Chairman, I have no hands raised. Oh, sorry, Councillor T. Wright. Sorry, Councillor Wright.
That's right.
That was a late one, Sammy. Sorry about that. Yeah, just you know, as I said earlier, one of my bugbears is this question about the Grade 1 agricultural land, and every time I ask the question regarding this, it's about, well, there seems to be ample there. But I think we don't look far enough into the future and what the needs are going to be for this country. Certainly, with current situation as far as Brexit concerned, we may well be on our own after January, and I think we're going to need all of the land that we can get, certainly Grade 1 agricultural land. And of course, I think all of the arguments have been put about the wildlife and everything else within this area. And as has been said, this is a pre-application as far as the access is concerned. But I just think somewhere we have to draw the line. I know the government at the moment is planning to change all planning laws, which will give them a free-for-all, basically. So I think for the future, I think that holds an awful lot of concern for people in the areas such as Ormsby, because they'll be able to build houses willy-nilly without any comeback to local authorities, which is a great deal of concern for us. But I think for this particular one, I think sometimes you have to say enough is enough. And I just think in terms of the Grade 1 agricultural land process, I think it is wrong. And I think we have to sometimes stand up for that. And I think that there are obviously concerns there for the residents in the area. I know the area itself. And I just think, you know, once you add on one road to another, I've seen it happening in Gorton, I've seen it happening in Bradwell, and I don't want to sort of have that imposed on other areas. So I think on this particular application, I'll certainly be opposing this on that basis. And obviously, I've always taken the view regarding parish councils having a view. And I know sometimes they'll just say no because it's the in thing to do. But I think in this particular case, I think there are enough concerns in this particular area for us to say, look, you know, this is outside the plan area. There are considerations as far as the wildlife and habitat is concerned. I think there are unanswered questions as far as highways are concerned. So I'll be certainly, I'll be opposing this application.
Thank you. We have Councillor Freeman.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I could just add, I mean, those of you who know me, I've been on the parish council 30 years and I was chairman for 17. And I always like to think that development control do listen to the people who live there, and I very much welcome Councillor Wright's comments. I would always hope to think that one day we would actually get an application in where we could actually say, we welcome this application, we can see the benefits. As I mentioned earlier about the traffic revision orders for Station Road, Norfolk County Council have stated they will not pay for them anymore. And you cannot expect the local people to fund traffic revision orders, which are really going to be caused by a developer. And I just find it extremely concerning that the members of the public who are just like you and me, laymen, but haven't got the experience that we have on development control, don't actually understand what is involved. And I can quite rightly see why some of these people are objecting. And it would have been so nice if all the information was available to be seen by everybody. And I appreciate we've had the coronavirus, which has not made things easier. So I would just to add that the fact is that it would be really good if we could in future try and ensure that all the information is available and not something that actually comes in on the day as a last minute attempt, because I just don't think it gives the right image to the public at all. Many thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Freeman.
Councillor Hammond.
Yeah, taking up from where Councillor Wright went off, again, we've got another piece of land for development which was outside the local plan. We spent months working on the local plan and putting in areas of development. There are 2 other sites in Ormsby that are earmarked for development, and we got another planning application which we didn't even envisage. And I don't even think that's a good windfall. It's a poor site, and I don't feel that we could really support it or should be supporting it, is what I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wainwright. Sorry, Councillor Wainwright, you're muted.
What I would like to say, listen to Councillor Freeman. It's disappointing that the parish council couldn't even be bothered to come and put their case. He may have been on the parish council for 30 years, but the parish council exists now and they haven't sent anybody to put their case. It's disappointing as well that we haven't actually heard from the developer. I would have thought that they would have at least had an agent, but you know, to answer the question, we do not have a 5-year land supply. And it's all very well for Councillor Hammond to say that basically it's not a good site and it wasn't in the local plan. But until we get this 5-year land supply, this is what we're going to have to face. And as Councillor Wright said, within a few months' time or a 12 months' time, it's build, build, build. So people will actually be able to build wherever they like under this Conservative government. But you know, we talk about Ormsby as though it's a world apart. But, you know, I invite some of these parish councillors to come to Bradwell and see the developments that have gone on there. Because, you know, I think sometimes you live in a different world. You know, it's an application. It's disappointing, as I say, that the agent's not here. But, you know, all the documentation is coming. It's all in the report, which Councillor... what's his name now? Councillor Freeman says is not there. Most of it is there, and quite occasionally things do come in at the last minute. That just can't be helped, and you can't blame councillors or officers for that situation. They do their best, but as I say, we need housing. My concern is that there is no 2-bedroom housing in this proposal, and quite clearly it says in the report that, you know, we need a lot of 2-bedroom houses in this part of the borough. So that's disappointing, but it is an outline application. I'm sure that could be sorted out afterwards. But I would like to say, if this was approved, could we put a condition on that basically this builder, this developer, would have to start the build out within, say, 2 years, because quite clearly there's applications gone in which he hasn't fulfilled. But is there any way that we could put a condition in that, as I say, that if this was approved, that he would have to start the development within 2 years? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wainwright. Anyone else, Sammy? No,
No,
Dean.
Chairman.
Dean, could you just come in regarding Councillor Wainwright's point there about the build-out time?
Yep, certainly I can. It's within our gift to actually sort of give a shorter permission on these. Bearing in mind it is an outline application. The standard condition will be sort of 3 years to submit the reserved matters, i.e. what it's the detail of the application there. We could cut that down to a year, or we could cut it down to 2 as said there, but which would then sort of get them to actually sort of get a move on with it. Let's put it that way there. Can I just pick up on a couple of other things as well, which are sort of just well, we've got the opportunity at the moment there. It's if the members are going to refuse the application there, obviously we need to sort of get the reasons why. But just what I'm thinking of is also because if there's still this doubt about the actual amount of information in there as well, we could certainly, I'd rather defer the application than refuse the application. Let's put it this way at this particular stage. So we can actually look at solid grounds for refusal of the application. Now, Councillor Freeman has said he's actually been down to the site with the highway officer, which is some indication that he's actually been to the site, as opposed to actually sort of sitting at his desk in County Hall looking at this. They're also, the county will have details of the application of the road network around the vicinity of the site as well. So they won't be doing this sort of blindly as if, you know, which I think has been sort of alleged from that point of view. Drainage side of things, who obviously that has just come in at the last moment there. The figures are sort of shown now. You know, the local lead flood authority, they don't allow certainly sustainable drainage systems, what have you, there to go without sort of good proof of evidence that that it will sort of stand up. But again, the details, the full details of that will then have to be submitted as part of any planning, the reserve matters application there as well. So they're accepting the principle of it all to start with, and then the further details will come in. So again, there's a clawback in there as well in terms of making sure that the drainage to the site is properly sort of managed. There is certainly this thing about sort of the newts in there, but again, they're off-site in there as well. And I don't think the ecologist, and Chris will correct me if I'm wrong on this, the ecologist hasn't actually sort of, apart from the newts, hasn't actually raised any other concerns about it. So there's a number of things, and except also Councillor Wright is saying about the sort of loss of agricultural land again as well. Now, obviously, and he's quite right, you know, we do sort of, this agricultural land is coming forward and forward there, but again, you have to put it again, and as I've said numerous times as well, in terms of the overall amount that's actually being lost of agricultural land there. And, yes, we do have two other sort of better sites, or two other sites which have been sort of put forward for allocation in the local plan, and as part of the allocation there, which are sort of sustainable locations considered to be that. But generally speaking, with this site, again, one of the reasons why it hasn't come forward is this sort of ascertaining the means of access to it, to the site. Now, quite clearly, this site, and we've had a lot of sort of a number of sites as well like this, where the reason they haven't come forward as part of the proposed allocation is because the means of the access to the site hasn't been demonstrated. So in this instance, the means of access has been demonstrated. And but as I say, you know, if we need to have sort of sustainable sort of grounds for refusal on it, so I'd rather, if members are minded to refuse it, to actually defer the applications so we can look a little bit further into these, including the possibility of having an alternative means of access to the site for construction traffic as well, because I take on board what local residents said, and Councillor Freeman in particular there has said, and it's something that we could explore further with them. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, Sammy.
Sorry, there's 2 more questions, Chairman. Councillor Wainwright.
I was just going to say, could we add in a condition that this is, the reserve matters only for a year, and something has to happen within 12 months. If that could be a condition, I would support the application. But I would like to ask Dean. Obviously, I talked about the mix of houses, and quite clearly, Dean, we need 2-bedroom houses in that part of the. Well, we need 2-bedroom houses all over the borough, but certainly in the villages. So, could that be negotiated with the developer? That obviously the mix of housing changes, so we do get some 2-bedroom houses on there.
I think certainly we can
because quite clearly we owe something to the young people of these villages, that they're able to actually go into 2-bedroom houses and stay in the borough. So if that could be negotiated as part of the outline negotiations, and obviously if we could get the developer down to 1 year to start development or do whatever they've got to do, I would be quite happy to support the application.
Councillor Freeman.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly to add, yeah, I absolutely agree with what Councillor Wainwright said. Yeah, and I do know where Bradwell is, and I know what Bradwell looks like. Ormsby Parish Council are working on a neighbourhood plan, parish plan, and as you say, we have got a number of sites, and we welcome good applications from good developers, which will provide the sort of housing mix that is needed by everybody. Just to clarify Dean's point, I did meet with a highways officer, but it was in relation to basically the width of the road at Station Road, not at the actual site entrance to this proposed development. It was on Station Road by the playing field, because we are very concerned that the banks have been eroded so much that the road width is reduced by possibly a metre. So that's just to clarify that. And I would very much support that this application was deferred until we get all of the available information in a very clear format, so that we can reassure residents and other people alike. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hammond.
Yes, I find myself totally agreeing with Councillor Wainwright that we would be better off with a mix of 2-bedroom places there, and also picking up on what Dean said about possibly deferring it to look at a different access point as well, if that could be done. So maybe we should possibly defer this, put it back to the developer to look at a different access and different mix, and then have it come back as a scheme that we could fully support.
Okay.
Could I come in there and just ask for some clarification on that? Is that access for the purposes of construction or access for the purposes of use?
Both. Access for construction and also access for use. So we're not got a lot of vehicles coming out into Foster Close, and I can't read it. Simmons Avenue. I mean, we're going to be sticking another 100 and something cars in and out of there, and then that's a bottleneck onto Station Road. Just look at changing it a bit.
Okay. Is there anyone else wish to speak? Personally, I think really we should defer the application so we get more details, so we can look at it properly and again in the near future. I don't know what the committee feel about that, but I think that's the correct thing to do. There are some unanswered questions regarding the road, and that would give Dean and the team time to come back for us to look at it again. I don't know what everybody else thinks about that.
Chairman, we have a question from Councillor Myers, or hand raised.
Hand raised, yeah, thank you. And on that context then, just to move things along, I would move to defer the application.
Have we got a seconder for that, please?
Yeah, I'd happily second that.
Okay then. So we will take roll call now for deferral, and Sammy will do the roll call.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to confirm, members, you are voting on deferring the application. Councillor Annison?
For.
Councillor Bird? Councillor Bird?
For.
Councillor Fairhead?
For.
Councillor Flaxman-Taylor?
For.
Councillor Freeman?
For.
Councillor Lawn?
For.
Councillor Hammond?
For.
Councillor Mogford? Councillor Myers?
For.
Councillor Wainwright?
Against.
Councillor Williamson? Chairman, I think we might have lost Councillor Williamson. Councillor T. Wright?
Against.
And just to confirm, Councillor Williamson, we've lost Councillor Williamson. Okay, so Chairman, that was approved for deferral with 2 against. Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Now, item number 6 for the Sea Life Centre. Sorry.
Sorry, Chairman, I just wanted to let the attendees know that they can now leave the meeting if they want to, now that that application is finished, but they're entitled to stay if they want to as well.
Okay. Yes, the application for the Sea Life Centre on pages 51 to 63. I have had a discussion with Dean this afternoon about this application. I have been contacted by 2 businesses on the seafront who do live in my ward. They hadn't been contacted by the council. I'm telling them that this was being heard at the council, and there is one of those who did send some comments in, and he hasn't had any reply. So I feel that this application should be deferred also, so that all those businesses on Great Yarmouth Seafront are fully aware of this application coming forward, so that they're all aware and their voices can be heard. If everybody is all right with that.
Chairman, I can confirm I have no hands raised in objection to deferral of the application. I'd just like to seek clarification from Caroline as to whether the monitoring officer as to whether I need to take a roll call on that or whether we can take it on assent. But first, I have a question from Councillor Wainwright.
I mean, reading the report, I mean, quite clearly, some, there have been some objections, and they're in the report. The objection which was received as part of the public consultation, whether it's proliferation of ice cream kiosks, food sales. I mean, this particular application is bobbing about for years, basically. And I don't know whether Dean can shed any light on these things that haven't been received. Because, this is an important application for the Sea Life Centre. And if we're going to defer it, let's just defer it to the next meeting, not indefinitely for any length of time. I mean, this is, this is important for a business that is a big business in Yarmouth that pulls in a lot of people, and they want answers to this. And I think it's appalling that we've got to a meeting and we're being asked as members to defer it because some people haven't had the information. Now, I'd like Dean or an officer to answer if that is correct, and if it is correct, why weren't they consulted?
I can assure you, Councillor Wainwright, that is correct, and I do agree with some of the points you raise, and that is very important for the Sea Life Centre that they do get their application heard. But looking at it from the other way, it's very important that the public, who we all represent, get their voices heard and do things correctly. And on this instance, I think there's just 1 or 2 things what are not correct. And I'm not saying defer it for the next 10 years or anything, possibly bring it back to the next meeting so that these people can be informed correctly. I mean, if Dean want to come in, that's fine.
I mean, I'm all for people having their opinion, and certainly they should. But I'd like to hear it from Dean why these people weren't notified. I mean, you've had a conversation with him, but as members of this committee, we're entitled to know what's gone wrong.
Okay, Dean, can you come in?
Yeah, sure, I can come in. The normal consultation has been carried out on them, publicity given to the application. What seems to have occurred was that there's been emails and letters sent to senior planning officer who's now sort of no longer working for the authority, which haven't actually got onto the file, and so haven't been taken into consideration as part of the committee report. And we didn't know that until the chairman sort of spoke to us about it this evening. So in all other respects, the publicity for the application is being carried out in accordance with the planning legislation there. So there's certainly nothing wrong in terms of what's been undertaken. It's merely the fact that the representations have been made which haven't been taken into consideration as part of this report.
Thanks, Dean.
Sorry, Caroline just wants to come in. The monitoring officer just wants to come in.
Chair, that being the case, that Dean has confirmed that some of those representations haven't made it, haven't fed into the report, I would suggest that your instinct was right to defer this to another date, so that the report can take those things into account.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Williamson has his hand raised.
I'm just going to confirm, I think it should be deferred. If people haven't been consulted in an open and transparent manner, there's no option but to defer it. I think it's really important that anyone who has the option to be consulted on these items of planning should actually be able to have their documentation put forward to the committee.
Councillor Williamson, I don't think it was the case that they weren't properly consulted. It was obviously it was an administrative issue that their responses didn't find their way onto the file. So I think the consultation
results in the same thing, Caroline. The information hasn't arrived.
Hasn't arrived. That doesn't mean they weren't consulted, though. So
yeah. So do we have to do a vote on that?
If it hasn't arrived, it hasn't been considered.
Sorry, Councillor Wainwright has his hand raised.
Councillor Wainwright?
Just like to come back on that. Quite clearly, it was an administrative error. I mean, obviously, I would imagine that the emails probably went to Gemma, who left us probably some months ago, but it's administrative error. I'm all for people being consulted, don't get me wrong, but we've got to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Because how do we know that, you know, that the people's things aren't getting through? I don't know. But it seems to be, you know, perhaps the chairman should just make sure that this thing is not allowed to happen again. You know, emails, if emails are being sent to people that are not with the organisation anymore, someone is to blame.
Certainly, Trevor, and that's why I brought this issue up when I found out about it last night. And so if everybody's happy to defer it, obviously I want it to come back as soon as possible so that can be considered and everything. I think that's the correct thing to do for everybody. If everybody is in agreement, I don't know if we've got to do a roll call on that, Caroline, or.
Sorry, Caroline, you're muted. I think you're saying it can be taken on assent if there's no objections. Yeah. So if any member has any objection, if they want to raise their hand to it being deferred. And Chairman, I have no hands raised, so that will be taken on assent that it will be deferred to a further committee.
Okay. Thanks ever so much. Thank you. And item number 7, the delegated decisions made between the 1st and the 31st of August 2020, pages 64 to 76. On your agenda, the report is attached. And item 8, appeal decisions. Dean, there's a few there. If you could just come up on those, please.
Dean, you're just muted.
Oh, there we go. Right, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so sort of an interesting little mix there, which sort of including, as you can sort of see at number 4 there, about sort of an HMO which was dismissed as well. And again, that was one of these ones about sort of having a poor standard of accommodation in there. And which seemed to we've had 3 or 4 like this now, which have been the same thing, which is, yes, sort of, it's all about sort of not necessarily the principle of an HMO that needs to be considered, but also the actual standard of accommodation in there. So, although we haven't had sort of a planning policy which specifically sort of mentioned about the size of HMOs and what should be required and what have you there, a lot of emphasis being put upon the national planning policy framework there about sort of creating a good size and good standard of amenity and accommodation within those sort of properties. 5 North Drive, members will remember this one because it was a committee recommendation, an officer recommendation for approval of it, subject to getting some money from the, or a section 106 legal agreement from the owner to actually sort of spend the money on renovating the property next door to it. And but members were concerned about the loss of holiday accommodation upon the sort of seafront there, and essentially the inspector has come down on that one and sort of said that the adverse impacts of the adverse impacts to the local economy caused by the loss of a primary holiday area accommodation would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the small social and economic benefits identified, i.e. by sort of spending the money on the enhancement of the property next door there. So we therefore saw that there was a conflict with our local plan. So upholding that fairly strongly and dismissing that one, I would say, in about a page and a half or so. Kalonga House, I think that's one that's been sort of reported in the press a number of times as well in there. And again, is about sort of the setting of the listed building, but also sort of the trees as well there, and sort of maintaining the character of the area. So, but that's a fairly lengthy decision, that, which is sort of 7 pages. I won't go in great length. And the other one was 34 Beccles Road, Bradwell. And this instance is sort of trying to squeeze a new chalet bungalow with car space into a sort of tiny sort of infill plot, which is at the back of Beccles Road there. And again, that one's been refused because of the cramped appearance of the new dwelling, which would be unsympathetic to its surroundings, and therefore doesn't actually meet the requirements of HOU 7 of the 2001 local plan that was at that particular time. So that's it. Thank you. If anyone's got any questions.
Yeah, anyone got any questions for Dean about any of that?
I've no hands raised, Chairman.
No, okay then. There's no other business that I know of. I'd like to thank everyone for the meeting today. I said earlier, best wishes to Councillor Barbara Wright, and the meeting is closed at 18:45. Thank you.
Lovely, Chairman. If I could just ask everybody just to stay until I say that the live stream is stopped.